Welcome everyone to the topic of scaffolding safety. We will talk about everything responding to scaffolding. Now, remember, scaffolding is something which we build it on an external to a core object, external to the core object. Remember, nowadays, even up if you fracture your bone, there is a scaffolding fracture or band-aid that has been put in. The plasters of Paris, which was earlier put in, is no longer been put in. A glorifying example subsequent slides out here. But before that, I need to tell you exactly what is the agenda. First and foremost thing, we'll talk about the basic component of scaffolding. We will talk about the exact work procedures, the pros and cons of doing the scaffolding part, and the tagging system, the daily inspection checklist thereby. So, what are the four things that we'll cover about the components, which will be there in the slide from two? Uh, the safe procedures, the absolute precautions that we need to undertake while utilizing scaffolding as a part of our daily work, the do's and the don'ts, the pros and the cons, or the advantage and the disadvantage of scaffolding fashion, and the tag thereby. Here, did I say the external structure that we build around it? And you see the net-like structure that comes around it across the building, which is the core structure. Did I use the word called plaster of Paris that was used to to aid your fractured bone repair? Similarly, nowadays you put in screws and get your bones aligned all together and keep your skin as airy as possible. Now, this is what is scaffolding is all about. It employers must train each of the employee work around how to work on a scaffolding, because remember, people can have a tendency to fall down because if they are very loosely done, it might be the fault of the employee. And in most probably, if they have not tied it, or they have not utilized the fall arrest procedures, or the scaffolding was very lethargically set up. So we need to understand this process altogether. So let us understand scaffolding is all about. It every part, every definition that needs to be spoken around it, we have to understand this. Now, talking about the bearer part, here is the bearer again. Let me remember, where is my cursor gone? Now this is the bearer part. Here is the bearer. A bearer is the small length or the breadth road which goes around it. On the other hand, the coupler or the clamp, this is a coupler and a clamp. It's what binds the strengthens the material between the horizontal and the vertical rod that comes around it. The guardrail system is often the guardrail system. This is the guardrail system if you want to clearly understand. Now, the mid-rail is the bit in between the guardrail. If there are certain rods that has been kept so as to justify the strengthening of the guardrails, that comes into play. Yes, definitely yes. That is what known as a mid-rail. Then we have the mudsill, which is nothing at the bottom of the thing. This is a mudsill if you look into it. Now, what does it prevent? It absolutely prevent from sinking altogether downward. Let's look at it. They have a straightforward horizontal plate that has been built around it. Next, but not the last, would be a toe hold. Now, that is what actually binds the body. So, again, given in the fact, as in the heights of the guardrail, the mid rails that needs to be given as far as the inches, and it varies from place to place. You cannot have one particular statement time and again out there mentioned out there. So, what is a bearer? Let us understand. It is the horizontal member of scaffold where the platform is rested out altogether. This is what we are talking about. It the coupler or the clamp is basically a device to lock in together the different parts of the scaffolding things, usually made up of metal because all the materials are metal oriented. Guardrail is, it prevents our employee to fall. It arrests, it's a arrest mechanism altogether. It's a prevention mechanism that goes around it. The mid rail is approximately the guardrails and the platform being secured uptight fashion that we talk about it. Mudsill, everybody can understand. It is a larger in area than the leg and will prevent altogether what is the specificity that is required. Then there is something called runner. Now, what is a runner? It's the if you have the bearer one is the horizontal part, the runner with the longer part that comes around it. Here is the runner. If you can tell it to you, the lengthwise horizontal bracing bearing the members for both of the side. That is what is a runner. And of course, at the end of the scenario is your toe boards or barrier at the sides and the end of the platform to guard against falling altogether. That is what we are looking at it. So uh, exactly. Now, this is the specification that comes around it. This might be, in all probabilities, is made up of metal. At certain sites, if where the availability of wood is very, very high, probably even in the third world country, I suppose bamboo shoots are often utilized as a scaffolding thing, the bamboos. But essentially, if what I understand, I want to tell it to you is the size of the inches which is mentioned out here. It is 2 into 4 inches or 2 into 6 inches. As in the top rail is concerned, or the intermediate rail that we are talking about it, we have already said about the bearing part, which is the breadthwise that comes around it. Then is the ledger. Ledger is what holds it together, all together, and braces it. Now, mud cell is kept right at the bottom of the scaffolding thing. Remember, mud cell actually gets entrenched into the ground. So the sake of clarity, I have not shown you the toe boards altogether. So this needs to be under time and again. Talking about the working procedures. Now, why do we talk about the work procedure? Remember, at the beginning of the shift, workers using the scaffolding self checks at the scaffolding belt safety meets with all the working requirements, verifying what these are the five elements that needs to be verified. Remember, it has to be done at the very beginning of the shift. The scaffolding belt has been safely and meets all the criteria that has been denoted out there. One of the major attributes of the base of the scaffold is sound, absolutely on level and in adjustment. We are talking about it. Legs are plumb and all bases are installed. Cross panel members are at level. All ties are in places and secure, and all planks, decks, guardrails, and necessary things are secured in a good condition. Please understand something similar which has been mentioned out here. So, what is working procedure? This is the worker procedures at the very beginning. Please check it up. What do you check? The legs, the plumb, the cross members, the clamps are in place. They are perfectly working together. So check it out here, out there. So when working on a scaffolding, please understand the worker should have an arrest mechanism for from falling. Climbing the scaffolding using a proper means will never climb on the braces. Maintain a good housekeeping at all times at all areas, verifying that suitable means of raising and lowering equipment and material is used. This is what is to be stocked. When I say suitable, it is the strength of the material that counts altogether. It should be strong enough. It should be firm enough, and there should be enough gripping power that goes around it and prevents a person from falling or toppling down. Never ever remove guardrails, even if it is temporarily without any consent. Absolutely, mind you, it's a supervisor's responsibilities if there are any anomalies as far as the guardrail is concerned. There has to be 100% fall protection. I have depicted a pictures out here for you to understand for whatever the scaffolding structures is all about it. The fall arrest mechanism should always be placed in place, not multiple, not one times, but probably multiple times as long as possible. This is a dangerous place to work around it. The pictograph actually shows you everything regarding scaffolding. This is a traditional method of building a house. If you look into it, the house itself is very traditional in orientation. So, what do we work around it? Workers will never remove any structural part of the scaffolding without first checking the project supervisor. This is what we are looking at all. We have to understand what workers are going to do. It is the responsible person who has to give a nod before anything goes away. So then comes place the load on scaffolding greater than the design capacity. Never do it, because it will ultimately lead to an accident. Because at one point of time, over a period of time, at one point, you remember with the longer duration, the load carrying capacity will diminish and it will break down. So rest on the place Equipment material on the guardrails. Again, one of the fallacies that workers should never do is put anything on the guardrail. Guardrail is there only to prevent human beings from falling down. So that is what is very important. Then undermine the base of the scaffolding, the foundation. This is the foundation, the relation with it, where the ground thing, where the weight bearing machine comes around it. To talking about it, stand on the scaffolding, horizontal members cross, brace and attain the work elevations time and again. Now I have given you a tagging in terms of color altogether. Please understand, the red is for danger, the yellow is for modified and does meet the worker's requirement, whereas the green is for the safest for the use. Now, this might be with a precaution, with an element of risk that you want to go around it. So, everything which is tagged in red color will be used during the erection or dismantling when the scaffolding is left unattended. This is one thing which you want to go around it until and unless everything replaced with all greens. Yellow, whenever the scaffolding has been modified to meet the work requirement, but as a result can present hazard to the user. So you have an element of risk out there when it is being mentioned in the yellow card, and the word caution would be clearly stated, the word warning would be clearly stated. Looking at the green, these tags are hung on scaffold that is safe for utilization. The workers may climb up, they carry on the depicted or designated amount of weight, not beyond the weight capacity that can be going around it. So we need to understand this concept altogether. Inspection before each work shift and after each occurrence, there should be a structural integrity. There should be a proper investigation, reporting, and documentation that comes from altogether there. Last but not the least would be the checklist that I have given it to you, given it for your reference altogether. For there are 14 pointers that comes around it that came into my mind. I wrote it down. You are at your liberty to have it elongated or curtailed as per the requirement of the job. So, first is scaffold erection conducted by a competent workers or probably an engineer in this case, wherein the divisions of the weight should be equally and amicably done. Next would be scaffolding should be plumb, tight, square, straight, and directed, firmly tall. All scaffolding components should be present with the tight fixtures altogether. So if you've done the top three things, most of the pressures of accident gets carried out. But then baseline screws, firm supported muscles are a must. Platform planking should be tied down absolutely securely. Should be no loose anomalies out there. Separate ladder for scaffolding access. I again reiterate the fact that top three is the most important, but then comes the in between middle five parts, which is the separate ladders for scaffolding, T-board securely to be maintained around it, walkways has to be clear, uh, fall protection has to be used when erected. Now, these are human centric. This scaffolding has already been done, and you are now working upon it. Where we are talking about the bracing, the decking, the pins, everything should be meant and properly in place. Remember, after the work, after the shift, housekeeping is a must thing for all of you. You cannot keep anything on to the scaffolding because this is not desired in the first place, and it might relate to some transportation in the some irritation during the movement and perhaps accident. So there isn't much of a room in scaffold. So it is important to store tools and materials in an orderly fashion at the required place, absolutely desired place. Keep the platform absolutely free from obstruction. Place the debris and the waste material in a container and remove from the platform as quickly as possible. Anything which any debris, any wastages, any scrap, any trash that comes out at the end of your work, remove it and throw it out. Dispose it responsibly. Other safety highlights are everybody is exposed to fall in terms of scaffolding. Please identify 100% fall protection parameters have been met altogether. Please ensure that fall arrest mechanism are in place. All scaffolding planks are to be tied down, plumb and flat. This is what we are talking around it. all hoisting equipment, remember the word is hoisting, or picking, or the erecting equipment that we talk about, should be installed on scaffolding, must be signed off, approved by engineer, and must be inspected as frequently as possible. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this.